The champagne tasted off, bitter in a way I hadn't noticed before. I watched my fiancé, Mark, press his lips against hers. It wasn't a friendly peck or a casual greeting. It was the kind of deep, meaningful kiss that rewrites history, that erases 5 years of a shared life in a single moment. I found myself pulling at the fabric of my black cocktail dress, feeling suddenly like a stranger at my own party, or what was supposed to be our party. The law firm's anniversary celebration felt hollow now. Just a few hours ago, everything had felt so different, so right. My hair was styled in the soft waves Mark always said he loved, and my engagement ring felt heavy on my finger, catching the light and drawing compliments all evening. The firm's senior partners had been so welcoming, introducing me as the brilliant digital forensic expert who was also Mark's better half. I had felt a surge of pride standing next to him, believing that his promotion to partner, which he was set to announce tonight, was a victory for both of us, another step toward the future we were building. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was alive with ambition, crystal chandeliers throwing fractured light onto the faces of the city's most powerful lawyers. I had helped Mark practice his acceptance speech for weeks, thinking this night was about us. As I walked over to the circle of people Mark was talking to, his boss, Jonathan, gave me a warm smile. "Clara, I was just telling Richard here about your amazing work on that Henderson case," he said. "We might need to bring you in on something else soon." I smiled and joined the conversation, explaining how I had managed to trace the digital breadcrumbs that everyone else had missed. Mark rested his hand on the small of my back, a familiar gesture that always made me feel secure. Tonight, however, it felt less like a comfort and more like a claim. "You two are quite the power couple," someone remarked, and a few people raised their glasses in our direction. It was in that moment that I saw her for the first time that night. Jessica, Mark's ex-girlfriend from law school. She had recently been hired by BDF Tech, one of the firm's biggest clients, and she stood out in a striking red dress against a sea of dark suits. Her presence seemed to change the air in the room, or maybe it was just Mark who felt it. His hand left my back and his focus seemed to splinter. "Isn't that Jessica over there?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as I could. "Is it? I hadn't noticed," Mark replied, a little too quickly, his eyes refusing to meet mine. But I had noticed. For the rest of the evening, I saw them exchange small, almost invisible glances. I saw their fingers brush and linger for a moment too long when they both reached for a drink at the bar. I saw them share quiet, whispered words that made her laugh and touch his arm while he leaned in closer than was necessary for a simple conversation between colleagues. Every small gesture was a piece of data, and my professional instincts were screaming that the evidence was piling up. Still, a part of me, the part that loved him, refused to draw the obvious conclusion. "Mark seems a bit distracted tonight," Jonathan commented quietly, pulling me back into a discussion about a new security contract. "It's a big night for him. Nerves, I suppose." "It must be," I said, my voice steady, as I watched Mark check his phone and then slip out of the ballroom through a side door. A few seconds later, Jessica followed him. "Would you excuse me?" I said to Jonathan politely. "I should probably go wish him good luck before his speech." "Of course," Jonathan nodded. "Partners always need a little support." My heart started to pound in my chest as I made my way through the crowd, offering brief smiles to people I knew. I reached a service corridor just outside the main ballroom and stopped when I heard their voices. It was a reflex honed by years of my work. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, and started recording before I moved any closer to the sound. "We can't keep doing this, Mark," Jessica whispered. "She's right in there." "You promised you would end things," she continued, her voice filled with impatience. "It's been months. How much longer do I have to wait?" "The timing just isn't right," Mark protested quietly. "The partnership announcement is happening tonight." "It's always something," she sighed. "First it was your mother's birthday, then it was the down payment on the house, and now it's this. And I have to stand in there and pretend I don't know you." I leaned my back against the cold wall of the corridor, my hand gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "After tonight, I promise things will be different," Mark said, his voice softer now. "Once I make partner, I'll have the stability I need. I can break it to her gently." "And what about us?" Jessica asked, What about our weekend trip to the cabin? I'll tell her it's a work retreat, he said, his voice reassuring. My other hand went to the engagement ring on my finger. Mark had told everyone it was 3 months' salary, a grand symbol of his devotion. All the while, he was planning trips with another woman. She doesn't suspect a thing? Jessica asked. Mark let out a quiet laugh, a sound that cut right through me. Clara is a genius with computers, but she's trusting. She believes anything I tell her. Their voices faded, and I felt frozen to the spot. With a huge effort, I made myself look around the corner. The image burned itself into my mind. Mark had Jessica pressed against the wall, his hands cradling her face, their kiss deep and familiar. He was touching her face the same way he had touched mine that very morning. A cold, awful clarity washed over me. There were no tears, no surge of anger. There was only a strange, detached focus, the same mental state I entered when I was deep into a difficult case. I silently stepped back, stopped the recording, and walked back into the glittering ballroom. "Did you find him?" Jonathan asked as I rejoined his group. "Not yet," I answered, my voice perfectly smooth. "But I was thinking more about those security protocols. I have a few ideas that might interest you." For the next 15 minutes, I outlined a comprehensive security plan for Jonathan and 2 other partners. My voice was steady, my reasoning was flawless, but on the inside, I was carefully packing away 5 years of love and trust, cataloging every lie and planning my escape. "You've given us a lot to think about," Jonathan said, clearly impressed. "We should schedule a formal meeting for next week." I nodded politely and excused myself just as Mark re-entered the room, adjusting his tie. Jessica appeared from a different doorway a moment later, reapplying her lipstick. In the ladies' room, I leaned against the cold marble counter and looked at my reflection. The woman staring back at me looked surprisingly composed for someone whose entire world had just shattered. I splashed cold water on my wrists and took 3 slow, deep breaths, a calming technique my mother had taught me. Then, with quiet resolve, I twisted the diamond ring off my finger and dropped it into my clutch. 5 years of shared dreams reduced to a hard little stone in a velvet-lined purse. I sent a quick text to my old roommate, Chloe. Within a minute, our old emergency code, a simple word we'd come up with in college for dire situations, flashed on my screen. My phone rang a moment later. I ducked into an empty stall and answered, putting it on speaker. "Clara, thank God!" Chloe's voice said, filled with a practiced sense of alarm. "The main server's been breached. Client files are being exposed. We need you here right now." "Give me 20 minutes," I replied loudly, just as another woman came into the bathroom. I left the restroom and found Mark mingling near the bar, his arm resting casually on the back of Jessica's chair, as if it belonged there. "Mark, there's an emergency at the office," I explained. "It's a server breach. I have to go." His face showed a flicker of confusion, which was quickly replaced by what looked like relief. "Can't someone else handle it? We have $1 million client's data at risk." "I'm on it," I said, already turning to leave. "But your speech," he started. "You've got this," I said, with a confidence I didn't feel. I walked out without a goodbye, unwilling to risk tasting her lipstick on his lips. Outside, the cool night air was a welcome shock. As I got into a taxi, a message from Mark popped up on my phone, asking about the security contract I'd discussed with Jonathan. I glanced back at the hotel, a glittering monument to his ambition. My fiancé was busy building a new future with someone else while I was dismantling ours. "Out of reach," I typed back, just like the contract. Then I disabled my location sharing and dropped the engagement ring into the taxi's tip jar. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Rough night?" he asked. "No," I replied, watching the hotel disappear behind us. "Just the end of a chapter." Chloe was waiting for me at our old apartment, armed with a bottle of wine, a carton of chocolate ice cream, and a determined look that softened when she saw my face. After years of friendship, she could read the signs no one else saw: my rigid posture, my controlled breathing, and the very noticeable absence of my engagement ring. "How bad is it?" she asked, handing me a glass. "Digital evidence level bad," I said, sinking onto the familiar couch. I didn't say another word, I just played the recording. Mark's voice filled the quiet apartment, talking about weekend getaways while I was at home planning our wedding. When it was over, Chloe silently refilled my glass. "I'll help you bury the body," she said, her attempt at a joke. A sharp, unexpected laugh escaped me, a release of the cold anger that had been building inside. "No bodies," I said, pulling my old laptop out of the spare room I'd left behind when I moved in with Mark. Something more fitting for a digital forensics expert. We used to joke about a ghost protocol, a plan I had for clients who needed to disappear from their digital lives after a bad breakup. It never felt real until now. I started the process of erasing myself, disabling location services, suspending social media, setting up email forwarding rules, and changing every password I could think of. "He's going to panic when he can't find you," Chloe said, watching me work. "Good," I replied. I connected my phone to my laptop and began downloading every text, email, and photo from the last 6 months of my life with Mark. The doorbell buzzed, announcing the arrival of spicy noodles and dumplings, my go-to stress meal. As we ate, I looked more closely at the photos from the party. "Look at how he's holding her hand," I pointed out to Chloe. "That's his move. He's been doing that since we were in college." The timeline started to become clear. Jessica had joined Mark's company 3 months ago, which was exactly when his late nights at the office and weekend work conferences had started. The realization was a sharp physical pain. "You trusted him," Chloe said softly. "That's what you're supposed to do in a relationship." Meanwhile, Mark's texts started to pile up, each one more frantic than the last. His concern felt less about my well-being and more about his loss of control. Digging deeper, I found a pattern of regular cash withdrawals from our joint savings account, along with other charges I couldn't account for. "He's been taking money from our savings," I said, the number on the screen making me feel sick. Nearly $15,000. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated financial deception. He might even be embezzling from the firm. I needed legal advice. I sent a text to Sarah, a friend from law school who now specialized in family law, and asked for an urgent meeting. "Bring all your documentation," she replied, "and chocolate." By midnight, a new chapter of my life was already underway. Mark's texts had grown desperate. At 11:23 p.m., he wrote, "I'm at our apartment. Your things are here, but you're not. What is going on?" By 11:47 p.m., his tone had shifted. "I've called the hospitals. Please, just tell me you're okay." At midnight, a new message arrived. "Is this about Jessica? It's not what you think." I ignored his pathetic defense and put my phone face down on the table. "Tomorrow," I said to Chloe, "I'm taking personal leave from work for a family emergency." "You are my family," she said, her voice firm, "and this is definitely an emergency." Her dining room became our command center. Laptops were open, documents were spread across the table, and as the night wore on, wine was replaced by coffee. I worked with the same methodical focus I brought to my most complex cases, gathering evidence, identifying patterns, and building a case that couldn't be refuted. "What do you actually want to get out of all this?" Chloe asked as we looked through bank statements. "Revenge? Money? Or just to be free of him?" Her question made me stop. Underneath all the anger and betrayal, a clearer purpose was forming. "Justice," I said, "not revenge. I want there to be consequences for his actions, and I want to get my dignity back." Chloe nodded, a small smile on her face. "Ghost protocol with accountability. I like the sound of that." At 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Mark's mother, Helen. After my own mother passed away, she had become like a second mother to me. "Should I answer?" I asked Chloe. "He probably called her when he couldn't get a hold of you," she said. "Using her to manipulate you is a low move." I sent the call to voicemail and listened to the message right away. "Clara, dear, it's Helen. Mark is worried sick. He said there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Please, just call me back so I know that you're safe. We love you." The genuine warmth and concern in her voice brought tears to my eyes. She had no idea what her son had done. She was another victim of his lies. "I'll text her tomorrow and tell her I'm safe," I decided. By morning, Mark had called 27 times and left 14 voicemails. His latest text was a threat. "If I don't hear from you by noon, I'm filing a missing persons report." He won't do it, Chloe said, looking over my shoulder. He might. His public image is everything to him. I drafted a response, deleted it, and started over. Finally, I sent a simple message. I'm safe. Do not contact me for 48 hours. Do not file any reports. His reply was instantaneous. Where are you? We need to talk. I turned off my phone. After a quick shower and changing into some spare clothes Chloe kept for me, I prepared for my meeting with Sarah. All the evidence was organized, backed up, and saved on an encrypted drive. What should I tell people at the office? Chloe asked as she got ready to leave for her job at the same firm where I worked. Tell them I had a family emergency and I'm taking personal leave. Nothing else. And if Mark calls the office, the ghost protocol is in effect there too. They know the communication blackout procedure. As Chloe left, she gave me a tight hug. He really underestimated the woman he was messing with. Alone in the quiet apartment, the reality of the last 12 hours began to sink in. The only sounds were the hum of my laptop and the occasional notification from my work email. I gave myself 5 minutes to feel it all, the betrayal, the loss, the anger, and underneath it all, a strange feeling of relief. It was as if a part of me had been waiting for the truth to finally come out. Then, I straightened my shoulders, closed my personal email, and opened a new document. At the top, I typed a new heading. Case 001, The Disappearance of Clara. Below it, I wrote a simple objective. Subject will be held accountable for his actions through legal and professional channels. No collateral damage to innocent parties. This is about justice, not revenge. My doorbell rang at 9:30 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Sarah holding 2 cups of coffee and a briefcase. When I opened the door, she looked me over with the sharp, knowing eyes of someone who had seen more than her fair share of relationships fall apart. You look surprisingly put together for someone whose world just fell apart, she commented, handing me a coffee. I'm saving the breakdown for after we have a strategy, I replied, leading her into our command center. I need a plan before I let myself have feelings. Sarah looked at the wall where we had taped up printouts of bank statements and transcripts of the recording. Her expression shifted from professional sympathy to personal anger. Well, she said, setting down her briefcase, he certainly picked the wrong woman to betray. My meeting with Sarah lasted for 3 hours. We went over every detail of Mark's betrayal. The personal lies were one thing, but the financial issues were something else entirely. These strange client billing charges, Sarah said, tapping the spreadsheet I'd made, could easily be seen as embezzlement. Skimming small amounts over time adds up and shows a clear pattern of fraud. I showed her how the timing of the charges lined up with his supposed weekend trips. This cabin rental charge shows up right after a deposit from Crawford Industries, I explained. Sarah took detailed notes, her legal mind catching things I might have missed. The partnership committee would be very interested in this, she said. Law firms do not take financial misconduct lightly. I don't want to destroy his life, I clarified. I just want him to be held accountable. Sarah nodded and then outlined a few different ways we could proceed, from a quiet separation to a full-blown legal battle. The engagement ring, she explained, was legally mine, but I had no desire to keep it. The joint savings account is the biggest problem, she said. He's been systematically draining it. I recommend we separate your finances immediately. By the time Sarah left, we had a clear 3-phase plan. First, I would secure all of my assets and continue to document everything. Second, we would strategically release information to the right people. And third, only if absolutely necessary, we would proceed with formal legal action. As I walked her to the door, I felt more in control than I had since I saw that kiss. One more thing, Sarah said, turning back. Change up your entire routine. Go to a new coffee shop, a different grocery store, a new gym. People like Mark hate to lose control, and he'll be looking for you in all the old familiar places. After she was gone, I followed her advice. I immediately opened new bank accounts and separated my finances, documenting every transfer Mark had made from our joint account. I left him exactly half of what was in there, not a penny more or less than what he was entitled to. When my work phone rang with my boss Jim's name on the screen, I hesitated for a moment before answering. Clara, is everything okay? Chloe mentioned a family emergency, he asked. I was careful with my words. I'm dealing with a personal matter and I've already submitted the paperwork for my emergency leave. Of course, Jim said, his voice full of understanding. Take all the time you need. After a short pause, he added, Mark called the office looking for you. He seemed very concerned. My stomach tightened. Did he say why? Just that he couldn't reach you, Jim said. Is there anything I should be worried about? No, I said firmly. This is a private matter between Mark and me. I would appreciate it if you could respect that. Understood, Jim said. Then he changed the subject. By the way, Sterling Corp reached out about that security consultation. It seems you made quite an impression on them at the party. I was surprised they had called so quickly. I'm not really in a position to take on new work right now, I started to say. Jim interrupted me. They're offering triple your usual rate, and they specifically asked for you. They were impressed with your innovative approach to digital evidence. An idea began to form in my mind. Would they be open to a remote consultation? I'll be working from a different location for a while. I'll ask them, Jim said. You just take care of yourself, Clara. As soon as I hung up, my personal phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. It's Emily, please call me. It was Mark's sister. We had grown close over the years, bonding over a shared love of true crime podcasts and gardening. I hesitated for a moment, then used my work phone to call her back. Thank God, she said as soon as she answered. Are you okay? Mark is telling everyone that you're having some kind of breakdown. The words felt like a slap in the face. He's saying what? He told Mom that you've been working too hard and you had some kind of episode at the party. He's trying to make himself look like the concerned fiancé, while you're supposedly off taking space. Is any of that true? No, I said, my voice firm. Emily, I saw him kissing Jessica at the party. I have a recording of it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. That lying bastard, she finally said. He told us she was just a colleague he was mentoring. The mentoring included weekend trips to a cabin and jewelry from Tiffany's, I added. Not to mention some very creative accounting with our joint savings. Emily gasped. Mom is going to be devastated. She loves you. I don't want to put you in the middle of this, I said, but I couldn't let you believe his version of the story. Where are you? Do you need anything? I'm safe. That's all you need to know for now. But there is something you could do for me. Emily agreed to be my eyes and ears, to report back on what Mark was doing and saying without confronting him directly. As his sister, she would have access to family conversations that I was no longer a part of. By the third day of my disappearance, Mark's concern had turned to anger. According to Emily, he had started telling people at work that I was emotionally unstable and had abandoned him just before he was about to be made partner. The firm has put his partnership review on hold, Emily reported during one of our daily calls. They said it was because of personal issues that were affecting his judgment. Has he said anything about the money? I asked. No, but he's suddenly very interested in who has access to the firm's billing records, and he keeps checking his personal bank accounts. Meanwhile, Sterling Corp had eagerly agreed to my remote work proposal. I set up a new base of operations at Chloe's beach house, a small cottage 2 hours outside the city that very few people knew about. The change of scenery and the ocean view helped to clear my head as I dove into the new security contract. You're channeling all of your detective skills into your work, Chloe noted during one of our video calls. It's both impressive and a little bit terrifying. Focusing on digital security feels appropriate right now, I said, showing her my new workspace. How are things at the office? Tense, she said. Mark showed up yesterday looking for you. Security had to escort him out. My heart skipped a beat. Did he make a scene? Not really, but he didn't look like himself. His suit was rumpled and he'd missed a spot shaving. The perfect image is starting to crack. I pulled up my evidence board on the screen behind me. Any word on Jessica? Now that's the interesting part, Chloe said, leaning closer to her camera. She's distancing herself from him at work. She even requested a different lawyer for the BDF tech account. Self-preservation, I noted. She's protecting her career. Oh, and the industry newsletter wants to do a feature on you for their Rising Stars issue. That Sterling Corp contract is big news. I hadn't thought about the professional attention this new contract would bring. The timing was either perfect or terrible, depending on how you looked at it. Should I say no? Absolutely not, Chloe insisted. Your career shouldn't have to suffer because your fiancé couldn't keep his promises. 2 weeks after the party, I finally reactivated my personal email. There were 87 messages from Mark. The subject lines told a story of his evolving panic, from "Where are you?" to "This is childish" to "Please, let's just talk." The most recent one simply said, "Financial irregularities at the firm." I opened it cautiously. "Clara, the firm is doing an audit. There are questions about some of the client billing that I can't answer without your help. This could destroy my career. Whatever is going on between us, please don't let this be how it ends." He still had no idea that I had documented everything before I left. That same day, Emily called with an update. "The firm found financial problems during their audit," she said. "They're asking Mark about expenses he charged to client accounts." "What kind of expenses?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Weekend trips, jewelry, expensive dinners, all on dates when he was supposedly working late." She paused for a moment. "Clara, did you report him?" "I didn't have to," I replied honestly. "I just made copies of our financial records before I left. The firm's regular audit process did the rest." That evening, my doorbell rang. It was impossible. No one knew I was here. I looked through the peephole and saw Chloe holding 2 bags of takeout. "Security breach," she announced when I opened the door, "but I brought Thai food as a peace offering." Over dinner, she told me that Mark had shown up at her apartment, demanding to know where I was. "He was scary, Clara, not violent, but he had this intensity I've never seen before." She showed me a video she had recorded on her phone. Mark looked completely disheveled, his usual polished image gone. His voice got louder and louder as Chloe calmly told him again and again that she couldn't help him. "She's ruining my life out of jealousy," Mark shouted on the recording. "The firm is reconsidering my partnership because she just disappeared." On the video, Chloe's voice was calm and steady. "Maybe she's not ruining anything, Mark. Maybe Sterling Corp just offered her your job." Mark's face froze. "What are you talking about?" "The director position of the new cybersecurity division," Chloe replied smoothly. "The one you didn't even know existed because you never took her career seriously." The recording ended with Mark storming out of the room. I stared at Chloe, completely shocked. "There is no director position," I said softly. Chloe just grinned. "Of course there isn't. But his reaction tells you everything you need to know about how little he thought of your professional ambitions." The next morning, the industry newsletter published its feature on innovators in digital forensics. My picture was on the cover. The photographer had caught me standing on the deck of the beach house, looking out at the ocean, a confident and determined expression on my face. The article praised my work and my achievements, and in one short sentence, it noted, "Chin recently separated from her fiancé, attorney Mark Walker, and is now focused on expanding her professional portfolio." It was just one line, but it announced to the world that my life had completely changed. By noon, my professional inbox was flooded with messages of congratulations and inquiries from potential new clients. My personal phone was silent, except for a single text from Mark. "I see you've been busy building your career while mine falls apart. We need to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I continued to build my new life, one case at a time. Later that evening, a courier delivered a small package to the beach house. Inside was a velvet box. It contained an antique sapphire ring and a handwritten note from Mark's mother, Helen. "This belonged to my grandmother," she wrote. "I always wanted you to have it. Regardless of what has happened with Mark, this ring belongs with someone who understands its true value. Mark never did. Not with this ring and not with you. Call me when you're ready. With love, Helen." The tears I had been holding back for weeks finally came, not for what I had lost, but for this unexpected act of kindness, a reminder of who I really was. A month after that night, I decided it was time to go back. The apartment I had shared with Mark had been my home for 3 years. My books were on the shelves, my plants were in the windows, and the security system I had so carefully installed was still active. According to Emily, Mark was still living there, though he spent most of his time working later out with friends. I chose a Tuesday afternoon to go back, timing it for when he was usually at his weekly squash game. When I walked into the lobby, the doorman, Carlos, looked surprised to see me. It was clear Mark had never taken my name off the security list. "Miss Chin, it's good to see you," he said, recovering quickly. "It's been a while." "I'm just here to pick up a few things, Carlos," I explained as I walked toward the elevator. "Mr. Walker is upstairs," Carlos called after me. "He called in sick today." My finger paused over the elevator button. Mark never missed squash. He had gone last year even when he had the flu, just to keep his perfect attendance record. "Thanks for the heads up," I said, quickly recalibrating my plan. Still, I had every right to be there. My name was on the lease, my belongings were inside, and after weeks of avoiding him, I was ready to face whatever was waiting for me. On the ride up to the 14th floor, I went over the evidence in my head, just like I would before a trial. I had proof of his betrayal, my finances were secure, and my professional reputation was growing. I was calm and prepared. When the elevator doors opened, I walked down the familiar hallway and unlocked the door to our apartment. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It was a mix of the lavender from my diffuser, the coffee that was brewing in the kitchen, and Mark's cologne, which was stronger than usual. I found him sitting at the dining room table. He was freshly showered and wearing the blue button-down shirt I had given him for Christmas. There were papers spread out in front of him, and he looked up with surprise as I walked in. "Clara," he said, standing up quickly, "you're finally here." The apartment was too clean, too perfect. There were fresh flowers on the coffee table. It was obviously staged for a reconciliation that I had no intention of having. "I'm just here for my things," I said calmly, and started to walk toward the bedroom. Mark stepped in front of me, blocking my way. "We need to talk first." "No, we really don't," I said, trying to step around him. "I've been worried sick about you," he said, his voice soft and gentle, the same tone he used to calm down a difficult client. "You just disappeared. No one knew if you were safe." "I told you I was safe," I said, standing my ground. "And I left because I saw you kissing Jessica at the party." For a second, his confident mask slipped. "That was just a moment of weakness," he said. "A mistake. It was one meaningless kiss." I set my bag down on the counter and turned to face him. "We both know it wasn't just one kiss." "Whatever you think you saw," he started to say. "I didn't just see it, Mark," I interrupted him, my voice cool and even. "I recorded it." His expression changed from confusion to calculation. The lawyer in him was already assessing the damage. "You recorded a private conversation without my consent. That's illegal in this state," he warned. I couldn't help but laugh. "That's your response? Legal threats?" "I'm just pointing out." "Let me show you exactly what I recorded," I said, pulling out my phone. The sound of his own voice filled the apartment. "Clara is a genius with computers, but she's trusting. She believes anything I tell her." Mark's face went pale as he watched the video of himself kissing Jessica, of himself planning their weekend away. When it was over, he immediately went into damage control mode. "It's not what it looks like," he pleaded. "I was confused. I was overwhelmed. The pressure from work, the partnership. Jessica just caught me at a weak moment." "For 3 months straight?" I retorted, "with planned trips to a cabin and jewelry from Tiffany's?" The room was silent, the weight of his lies hanging in the air between us. In that moment, I felt a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Mark had underestimated me for the last time. Standing there on my own terms, I knew I was finally taking back my life. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen him make before difficult court arguments. "The financial problems can be explained," he said, repeating the same excuse he'd given the partnership committee. "Those were just misfiled expenses. Simple accounting errors." "How did that explanation work out for you?" I asked. A flash of anger crossed his face. "They've put me on probation, all because of you." "Because of me? I didn't make you charge your romantic getaways to client accounts," I countered as he accused me of leaking our private financial information. I walked over to the bookshelf where I kept my forensic textbooks. Before I left, I had made copies of my own financial records. What happened after that was just the natural consequence of his own actions. He followed me, his voice softening again as he tried a new tactic. Clara, we can fix this. 5 years has to mean something. One mistake can't just erase everything we built together. I turned to face him, really looking at him for the first time since I'd arrived. The man I had loved for 5 years seemed smaller somehow. His charm felt fake, his concern forced. How had I been so blind? It wasn't just one mistake, I said quietly. It was hundreds of little choices you made. Every time you texted her when we were at dinner, every weekend you lied about where you were, every night you came home smelling like her perfume, thinking I was too naive to notice. I never meant to hurt you, he said, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, keeping the distance between us. That's almost worse, I said. You didn't even consider my feelings enough for them to matter. As I started packing my books, Mark went back and forth between anger and pleading, between legal threats and nostalgia. It was an impressive performance, but it was useless. I only packed the things I couldn't replace: family photos, important documents, my specialized equipment. Your career will recover, I told him, as he complained about the partnership committee. They put you on probation. They didn't fire you. Your family's name still means something at that firm. The damage is done, he said bitterly. Everyone at the firm knows my fiancé walked out on me and then took a job with our biggest competitor. I didn't take a job with them, I corrected him. I'm a consultant on one specific project. He pulled something from his pocket. It was my engagement ring. I've been carrying this with me ever since that night, he said, hoping you would come back. The ring didn't stir any emotion in me. It was just a piece of evidence now, not a symbol of love. Is there any chance for us? He asked, his voice shaking. Instead of answering, I placed Helen's sapphire ring on the table between us. Your mother already made her choice, I said. His face darkened as he recognized his grandmother's ring. She understands consequences better than you do. Just then, the apartment door swung open and Jessica walked in, using a key I didn't even know she had. Her confident smile faltered when she saw me standing there. Oh, she stammered, her eyes darting between me and Mark. I didn't realize. Mark's face turned a deep shade of red. I thought you were coming later, he mumbled. An awkward, heavy silence filled the room. The reality was clear. They had planned to meet here, in our apartment, after I was gone. I should go, Jessica said, starting to back toward the door. Don't leave on my account, I said calmly. I'm almost done. Seeing them together in what used to be our home, I felt a strange emotion. It wasn't jealousy or anger, it was pity. Their entire relationship was built on lies. Jessica lingered by the door. Mark, you said you knew about us. You said you had agreed to end things. I raised an eyebrow at Mark. Is that what he told you? He told me you were just focused on your career and that you understood that sometimes relationships just end. The lies were so audacious they were almost impressive. Jessica then asked me about the rumor she'd heard about me taking a director position at Sterling Corp., her own confidence starting to crumble. This isn't a conversation we need to be having right now, Mark said, his eyes darting nervously between us. On the contrary, I said, I think this is exactly the conversation you need to be having. Jessica deserves to know what she's getting herself into. As I went back to my packing, Jessica started asking me about the signs I had missed, about Mark's explanations for his finances, for the nights he spent away. With every answer I gave, her expression grew colder, not toward me, but toward Mark. The partnership committee asked me about the expenses for the cabin, she said finally. You told me those were approved firm retreats. Mark's professional mask completely shattered. Those were legitimate business discussions, he insisted. Between which sheets? I couldn't help but ask. Jessica flinched, then straightened her shoulders. I think I should go. Jessica, wait, Mark called after her as she walked to the door. Clara is just trying to cause trouble. I didn't cause anything, I said, zipping up my last bag. I just provided information. What people choose to do with it is their own business. As I was about to leave, Mark made one last desperate plea. The partnership committee has asked me to take a leave of absence. My career is over because of this. His attempt to gain my sympathy was bold. I had to give him that. You might want to get a good lawyer, I advised, my voice all business. someone who specializes in professional ethics. At the door, I paused and looked back at the apartment that had been my home, the life I had built and now outgrown. Mark stood alone in the middle of the room, his confident posture gone. "How did you do it?" he asked quietly. "How did you just walk away from 5 years and not even look back?" I met his gaze one last time. I wasn't looking at the man I had loved, but at a stranger I was finally free from. "I learned from the best," I said, thinking of all the times I had watched him rehearse his courtroom arguments. The door clicked shut behind me, a soft but final sound. In the elevator, a wave of relief washed over me. I felt lighter than I had in years. As I walked through the lobby, Carlos gave me a respectful nod. "Everything okay, Miss Chin?" he asked. I smiled, a real, genuine smile that surprised even me. "Better than okay, Carlos," I said. "Much better." Outside, the city was alive with the energy of the afternoon. I loaded my bags into a waiting car and didn't look back at the building that had once been both my home and my prison. My phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. Mission accomplished? I sent back a simple reply. Independence declared, coming home. 6 months had passed since that night at the company party. I was sitting in my new office, reviewing security protocols for a financial tech startup. The wall of windows in front of me offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a view I had earned on my own, not through my association with someone else. The plaque on my office door was simple. Clara Chin, Digital Forensics Consultancy. Starting my own firm was never part of the plan, but freedom has a way of opening up new possibilities. The contract with Sterling Corp had led to other referrals, and my practice, which specialized in relationship-based fraud, had taken off. My personal experience had become my professional expertise. My assistant Alex knocked on the door before entering. "The conference schedule just came in," he said, placing a program on my desk. "You're scheduled for the 10 a.m. keynote on Friday. It looks like Mark's panel has been canceled." I glanced at the program. Mark's name was crossed out, with a note beside it that said, "Scheduling conflict." "Any idea why?" I asked, keeping my tone professional. "The gossip is that the Bar Association's investigation is heating up," Alex said. "Apparently, they're looking into more than just his expense accounts." I just nodded. I didn't feel happy or sad about it. The consequences of his actions were unfolding on their own, just as they should. My phone lit up with a text from Chloe, who is now my firm's head of cybersecurity. "Lunch is on its way. Also, I got the wedding invitation today. You're my +1. I smiled. 6 months ago, the idea of going to a wedding would have been painful. Now it just felt nice. "Absolutely +1. I texted back. "We'll dazzle them." Lunch arrived, a huge platter of sushi from our favorite restaurant. Chloe joined me in my office, kicking off her shoes and getting comfortable in one of the client chairs. "I heard something interesting," she said, mixing wasabi into her soy sauce. "Jessica is interviewing for jobs in Seattle." "That's a big move," I noted. "Apparently, her connection to BDF Tech has gotten complicated," Chloe explained. "Too many people are asking questions about her relationship with their former legal counsel." I thought about this news, but it didn't stir any strong emotions. Career self-preservation seems to be her specialty, I mused. "Speaking of specialties," Chloe continued, "your webinar on detecting relationship fraud has over 500 people registered already. People really connect with your approach." The webinar had started as a one-off, but it had quickly become something more. I had found a way to combine forensic techniques with emotional intelligence to help people spot deception in their own lives. "It's strange how things work out," I said. "Everything I learned from what Mark did has become something valuable for other people." "You turned your pain into a purpose," Chloe said. "That's a classic Clara move." After lunch, I went over my presentation for the upcoming conference. The Digital Forensics Annual Summit was the biggest event in our industry, and giving the keynote speech was a career milestone. As I was fine-tuning my slides, I got an email from Leo Harrison, one of the conference planners. Leo was a respected colleague I'd known for years, but we had recently reconnected at a cybersecurity workshop. "Looking forward to your keynote," his email read. "Any chance you'd be free for dinner on Thursday night? Strictly professional, of course. I'd love to get your thoughts on the Westlake case." The Westlake case was a complex corporate espionage investigation. Leo's firm was handling the technical side, and my consultancy was managing the human intelligence component. Our collaboration had been smooth and refreshingly straightforward. I found myself smiling as I typed my reply. Dinner sounds perfect. I have some thoughts on those email timestamps that might interest you. Our professional relationship was developing in a way that felt natural and respectful. Unlike with Mark, there was no competition, no condescension. Whether it would become something more than professional remained to be seen, but for the first time in a long time, that possibility didn't scare me. The conference arrived quickly. The ballroom was buzzing with energy as I stood backstage waiting to be introduced. Through a gap in the curtain, I could see hundreds of faces, colleagues, competitors, and potential clients. My name was on a massive screen, along with my firm's logo, a phoenix rising from a string of binary code. 5 minutes, Miss Chin, the event coordinator said. I smoothed down my blue dress and took one last look at my notes. This presentation wasn't just about my professional knowledge, it was about my personal journey. Sharing it felt vulnerable, but that vulnerability had become my greatest strength. As I waited, a familiar figure approached from the side of the stage. It was Mark. He looked thinner than the last time I'd seen him, his expensive suit hanging a little loosely on his frame. He still carried himself with a practiced confidence, but something around the edges had softened. Clara, he said, stopping a respectful distance away, I heard your talk was sold out. Mark, I acknowledged, my voice neither warm nor cold. I thought your panel was canceled. It was, he said, shifting uncomfortably. I'm just here for some meetings, trying to find new clients. Smaller firm now, starting over. I nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. His career at the prestigious firm had been completely derailed. I'm sorry, he said after a long pause, for how everything happened. Not just for getting caught, but for what I did, for who I became. The apology felt different this time. There were no excuses, no expectations. For the first time, I saw what looked like genuine regret in his eyes. Thank you for saying that, I replied simply. We stood in an awkward silence until the coordinator returned. 1 minute, Miss Chin. Mark gestured toward the stage. I won't keep you. I just wanted to say I've seen the work you're doing. It's impressive. As he turned to leave, I felt a sense of completion. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a closing of a chapter that had defined me for so long. Mark, I called out softly. He turned back. I hope you find what you're looking for. He gave a single nod, understanding that I wasn't talking about reconciliation. It was about release. Good luck out there, he said. My keynote speech received a standing ovation. I spoke honestly about using forensic techniques to spot deception, without ever mentioning Mark's name. The message resonated with the audience in a way I hadn't expected. Afterwards, people came up to me, sharing their own stories of betrayal and recovery, seeking both professional advice and a personal connection. At the reception that evening, I saw Leo at the bar. He waved, holding up 2 glasses of champagne. That was remarkable, he said as I approached. You managed to blend technical expertise with emotional intelligence in a way that actually matters. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciating the compliment. It's been a journey. The best expertise often comes from our own challenges, he observed. We found a quiet corner and our conversation flowed easily, moving from the Westlake case to personal stories. He had a respect for boundaries and a genuine interest in my opinions that felt refreshingly healthy. My phone buzzed with a text. I was expecting it to be Chloe, but it was an unknown number. Where are you now? The message read. The question felt loaded, and I assumed it was Mark using a new number. Instead of getting angry or ignoring it, I looked around the reception hall. It was filled with people who respected my work. I glanced at Leo, who was waiting patiently for me to finish with my phone. I thought about my thriving business, about the speech that had brought me so much professional recognition. I typed back a simple reply. Exactly where I'm supposed to be. I put my phone down and turned my full attention back to Leo, to our conversation about digital timestamps and hiking trails. When he suggested we could check out his favorite trail sometime, I found myself genuinely interested. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I stood by the window and looked out at the city lights. On my desk was a small box. Inside was a ring I had bought for myself when my consultancy celebrated its first profitable quarter. It wasn't an engagement ring, it was a promise to myself that I would never again compromise my own worth for someone else's comfort. I slipped it on my right hand, the sapphire catching the light. The stone reminded me of Helen, of her kindness in the middle of all the chaos. I made a mental note to call her the next day. My reflection in the window looked back at me, calm and confident, in a way that had nothing to do with who loved me, and everything to do with how I had chosen to love myself. The betrayal that should have broken me had, instead, revealed a strength I never knew I had. It had transformed my pain into a purpose, my loss into a liberation. The next day, I would give another workshop, but tonight I would sleep soundly, knowing that I had rebuilt not just my life, but my entire understanding of what that life could be. It was a life built not by someone else's choices, but carefully, piece by piece, by my own. The journey had not been easy, but standing there, I finally understood that Mark's kiss hadn't been the end of my story. It had been the moment the real one finally began.